that your camera is. Oh, okay, Tom has recorded. So good morning, everybody. Welcome to a final but festive coffee morning of 2025. I have had a quick look, those of you who have got your screens on. There's a few festivities showing, but if you've got them handy, please do put them on. So this is the final coffee morning of 2025. My name is Samantha Grant, and I'm a director at the IAB, and I'll be your host for today's session. I was hoping to have more of an update for you all from an AML perspective, but unfortunately there haven't really been any further developments. As you will have seen via our digital channels, we've been providing an explanation on the development in the AML landscape, and most importantly, trying to reassure you all. There is a much more in-depth article for you all to read in the next issue of IAB Connect, which will be out the first to second week of January. So please do look out for that. Now, many of you do know that it's been announced that the government has confirmed that the future AML supervision for professional services will move to the FCA. This is about simplifying a system that has become fragmented over time, and strengthen the UK's overall response to economic crime. So the IAB wants to be really clear that this is about that your AML obligations are not changing. So if you're already meeting your responsibilities, then there's nothing for you to do differently right now. This is a structural change in who supervises, not what is required of you. So professional bodies like the IAB will continue to play a vital role. So we'll be setting standards, supporting you, our members, and regulating professional conduct. The only change is that AML supervision will, in time, sit with a single public regulator, which is the FCA. Now, this will not happen overnight. We were hoping to have a timeline for you, but there isn't one. It obviously requires legislation, a carefully managed transition, and you'll be given clear guidance and plenty of notice in advance. So our focus as the IAB is ensuring this transition is smooth and proportionate and works for the profession. We'll continue to represent your interests, engage closely with the FCA and the government, and keep you informed at every stage. So for now, our message is just stay focused on good practice, keep doing what you're doing, and we'll guide you through what comes next. But obviously do look out for communication from us, because as and when we do have anything, we'll ensure that you are notified. A reminder that there is a secondary consultation to cover subsidiary considerations related to the FCA taking over AML responsibilities, which I did mention in the last coffee morning. I will put this link in the chat again because the consultation closes at 11:59 on the 24th of December, should you wish to comment. I also just wanted to make you aware, before we go on to our speaker, of IAB CPD accredited company protection workshops. Now, these launched this year, and due to their success, are running throughout 2026. So an email with the January details will go out this week, and further details on IAB socials will also be available. These sessions have been taken by Matthew Chapman of Company Protection, who was on the coffee morning back in October. And he's looking at how and why you should build resilience into your client's business, and using a tool that was created with the help of the IAB ambassadors, take a natural step into advisory services. So they're completely free to attend. You just have to register. And when you attend 2 sessions, you get 1 verified CPD point. So obviously, as well as getting an insight into how you can essentially add advisory services to your offering, it is also CPD verified too. So now onto our speaker. We just have one today. We're having a little bit of the Xero takeover. We're continuing with the theme of MTD, and the aim is obviously to provide you with as much insight as possible and the opportunity to gain clarity and ask questions around MTD as we move towards the April deadline. So today we welcome Stuart Miller, who is Director of Public Policy and Technology Research at Xero, and also Flaka Jazari, a member of the Xero team, is also on the call as well. Stuart will be talking about how to adapt workflows, support clients, and choose the right tools. So I know that many of you will already choose Xero, but for those that don't, it's an opportunity to have a look at what they can offer and their approach to MTD. So as always, please do drop questions in the chat and we'll come to them at the end. There is time factored in for questions. So I'll pass over to you, Stuart, to take over.
Thank you so much, Sam, and good
No
morning,
problem.
everyone. What an exciting coffee morning topic. We start with the wonderful entree of AML, and we get into the main course of MTD. So, as Sam said, my name's Stuart Miller, and I'm Xero's Director of Public Policy and Tech Research. I've been at Xero for about 5 years now, and prior to joining Xero, I worked as a tax director. And I have had a practice career of 20 years. So I consider myself an escaped accountant. And I'm delighted to be here with you for the last IAB coffee morning of 2025. Um, I have worked in MTD for longer than my child has been born. I've realized that I've worked in MTD for a quarter of my life, and that is quite depressing when you think about it. But I'm also very excited that we're actually going to be going live in April 2026. All the ambiguity is over. There's no potential shift of deadlines. We are here. We are happening. It is MTD. And I think it's sort of come out of nowhere. April 2026 is suddenly right round the corner. And, you know, you're either in two camps at the moment. You're either your practice is ready for MTD or you're bracing yourself for impact. And our session today is going to cut through some of that noise and focus on what matters most. It's going to be your practice's readiness. Hopefully, by the end of this session, you're going to have some actionable game plans to re-engineer workflows, supercharge your firm's profitability, and essentially turn this potential chaos of MTD into a powerful catalyst for growth. It's not just getting you ready for MTD, it's hopefully going to get you to lead the charge. And one of the things before we start looking at some of the stats, which we found from MTD, I want to acknowledge sort of some of the messaging that we've seen across the board and probably for years about MTD. And the preconception that it's just a button press. And in fairness, like by and large, yes, it is. But it's how we get to the stage to have our clients' data in a clean format, in good order, so we can press that button. Now, ultimately, the technology part, once we've migrated clients on, is the easy part. But I said the real challenge is going to be getting our firms ready and getting our clients ready for this change. So that's what we're going to tackle. And as you can see from the screenshot we've got at the moment, it's easy to think that MTD is just a compliance task. But let's shift our perspective to the opportunity it can bring us. And the feeling across the industry is overwhelmingly positive. And our 2025 industry report revealed that a huge 82% of your peers believe that MTD for income tax can directly help you win new clients. And as the deadline approaches, we're going to have a lot of unprepared businesses who are going to actively be seeking experts. And your readiness as IAB members is going to be a really powerful magnet to win those new clients and be able to support them through this digital transition. And on top of those findings, we found that 81% of those surveyed expect that MTD will actually lead to higher client satisfaction. And in a way, I think this makes perfect sense because the move to quarterly updates creates regular touch points and transforms that conversation from a single year review into an ongoing forward-looking advisory best practice and utilizing that fresh data. I always remember I had a fantastic farming client when I was in practice. And around this time every year, they would come to me, they had a December year end, and they would say, I'd really like to use my annual investment allowance. What have I got left? And I'd say, great, show me your books. And their wonderful bookkeeper would say, I've got January and February done. And I know I'm not alone in having these conversations with our clients. And then you're in that difficult position of, what are we going to do? Multiply what they've spent by 6 and hope for the best? It's going to give us tools to provide better advisory in this instance. And what's really surprised me when I saw these findings in this report is ultimately the industry doesn't see MTD as a regulatory burden. It's a government-mandated catalyst to build more efficient, advocacy and advisory-focused successful firms. So we move on to the next the next slide. One of the things I think is really interesting is how our practices are going to plan to deliver our MTD service. And this industry report shows a compelling story where the strategy is heavily influenced based on your practice size. So overall, about 60% of practices intends to provide a full MTD service, handling everything for their clients. In contrast, roughly a third plan to split the workload with clients managing their own quarterly updates. But for me, this is where it gets interesting, because for sole practitioner, the trend flips completely. The most popular option at 48% is a do-it-together model. This seems to be the sort of a scalable approach that frees up capacity to focus on sort of high-value finalization and review. And as practices grow, the pendulum swings firmly back. Around 60% of small or medium-sized firms plan to deliver the full service, that full end-to-end service for their clients, suggesting that obviously with bigger teams comes greater capacity to own the entire process. And this trend becomes undeniable when we look at large firms, where a commanding 70% of those intend to deliver a premium full end-to-end MTD service. I think the key takeaway here is there is no one-size-fits-all answer. Your peers who are getting ready for MTD now are making deliberate choices based on their business model and their capacity. The critical next step for those who aren't ready is to decide what path aligns with your practice's goals. So you can start to build your pricing, your processes, and any client communications around it. As we move to the next slide, we've just got to remember three key principles of MTD. They're digital record keeping, increased filing frequency, and the need for HMRC recognized and MTD compatible software. And I want us to sort of visualize these changes for our firm. So over on the next slide, we can visualize the effect MTD has. So here's our sort of calendar year for the first 26-27 tax year. And as we go forward, the first red line here on the screen shows our very familiar workflow, classic self-assessment season, from the traditional busy season peaking between October to January, which again, acknowledging that busy time, it's so grateful to see so many of you join us for this coffee morning today. But that's classic self-assessment. So if we overlay this yellow line here, we get new real-time quarterly updates, and these give us new peaks start appearing throughout the year, starting with the first return due by early August. Now, obviously, each quarterly return is only a fraction of the annual data. We only need, for those below £90,000, income, expenditure, profit, the classic three-line account submission. And there are some easements for those with joint property. But as you can see here, without effective workflows for your staff and clients, you risk creating 4 mini Januaries a year, which nobody wants. And on top of that, you've got the final declaration due on 31st of January every year. So this leaves our practice with a key strategic question. Are we going to complete this Q4 return in April, or are we going to stick with our traditional tax season workflow? So as we can see, these are the things we're going to have to deal with. And more importantly, if we've got clients who are starting in the 26-27 tax year for MTD, we still have to complete their 25-26 classic self-assessment return. So it might be we actually get our 26-27 quarterly information in before we've even started working on the 25-26 tax return. So we really need to be mindful of this. So if we move on to our next wonderful line graph that we've got. So again, we're going to look at our timeline for leading into MTD mandations. So again, we've got our first red line as we go through here. So we're all heading into that crazy January peak. And then we look at what our capacity is over the year. So this is essentially what we've seen as our staff level capacities to be proactive, to discuss upcoming changes of clients and handle necessary setups. And as we know now, our capacity at this time is very low because we've got busy tax season, people are taking annual leave over the holidays. And also we've already had a critical dip earlier in the year when we had sort of summer holidays. It's left us with a narrow window of a couple of months now for us to proactively engage and prepare our clients for these changes. So at the heart of MTD, as we move on to our next slide, preparing for MTD is about leading the shift from our manual to digital record keeping. It's a clear contrast between the old world and the new. On one hand, we've got the traditional service defined by manual input, the physical costs of paper record keeping, and an increased risk of non-compliance. But MTD is going to be a catalyst that moves us into the world of digital accounting and possibly cloud accounting. And this is where we're going to replace our manual entry with automation and powerful data insights. You can integrate with business apps on any device, and your clients can integrate with these on any device, leading directly to improved client collaboration and genuine advisory opportunities. I think the way I see it is this isn't just about clicking a compliance box. It's about leaving the inefficiencies of the past behind to embrace a more connected and collaborative and insightful way of working with your clients. So if we move on and we start to look at sort of the benefits to our practices, we know there are lots of jobs that need to be done. And to help us, we've got an MTD toolkit, which we'll share a QR code for at the end of this session. So we'll make sure we leave that on the screen so you can scan that if you're looking for some tools to help you. But as we can see on the slide here we've got at the moment, we've got lots of challenges, but also lots of opportunities. Are we going to use MTD as an opportunity to modernize our practice? You know, the sheer volume of filings makes automation and digital processes essential for these efficiencies. And it could be the catalyst to end those shoeboxes of receipts that you get from clients. Again, I always remember getting sort of a carrier bag. It was always a Tesco's bag. And it always had, for lack of a better term, the grimiest receipts in them. And every time I'd get them, you'd want to go and wash your hands after touching them. So again, in my mind of mine, going digital to avoid having those slightly grubby hands from dirty receipts is always a good thing. The thing I found, again, when I was in practice and we switched from manual to digital, is how much more we can deepen client relationships. And MTD is going to be no different, as it's going to allow us to take our relationships with our clients to a next level, because we're going to have more regular touch points. We're going to be able to have more conversations with our clients, moving from that once a year compliance task, as I found, as I said, when I worked in the tax team in my previous firm, you'd see clients once a year. Now we're going to get the opportunity to see them throughout the year to have better advisory opportunities. And also, as we said at the start of the session, you know, it is a chance to acquire new clients. MTD is going to push a number of sole traders and landlords to seek an accountant or a bookkeeper for the very first time. And it's going to be a strategic opportunity to decide if this is a market that you want to capture and to position your practice to win new business as well. So to fully appreciate the change MTD brings, let's be honest about the process we're leaving behind. For many, the traditional self-assessment workflow is going to be deeply reactive, and it's an inefficient cycle. It all starts with a classic information request, a constant stressful loop of chasing our clients for annual data that arrives in every format imaginable, from shoeboxes to spreadsheets. And we're trying to piece together information so we can, and that information can sometimes be over a year old. Then we move to our main workflow, which involves manually analyzing statements, collating data from all those different sources, and inevitably chasing missing information over and over again. And I'm sure many of you are dreading the January rush, knowing full well that we're going to get those clients who we've been sending letters to, emailing, phoning for months to say, please get me your dividend information, please get me your bank interest information. And they're going to rock up on the 31st of January at 3 p.m. and go, hello, sorry I missed your messages. Here's all this stuff. Oh, I've got a missing dividend voucher. How are we going to sort this out? And I find this process very fragmented and can be quite stressful for both you and your clients. And I think this is the very cycle that MTD can break, moving from that annual scramble to a more continuous and collaborative way of working. And how we're looking at this from a Xero standpoint is obviously Xero is designed to transform your practice operations from manual to digital. First, it enhances compliance and accuracy. Features like bank feeds and HubDoc and other tools sort of in the markets that automate data capture. So it minimizes manual errors from the start. And with real-time data visibility and direct secure submission to HMRC, we hope accountants and bookkeepers can be confident in the accuracy of every filing. Secondly, the automation can drive huge efficiency and time savings. The seamless flow of data from a scanned receipt in HubDoc all the way to submission drastically reduces our admin time and our clients' admin time. Tasks like automated bank rec through Just Ask Xero and expense processing are streamlined, freeing up your team for high-value work. And then it improves financial management and collaboration. By having that up-to-date information allows proactive tax planning, better business decisions, and in a cloud platform, it allows for secure real-time collaboration between you and your clients from anywhere in the world. I always enjoyed one of my clients who always, by her own admission, took January off, and she'd go to a yoga retreat in Bali. And I sat there slaving away over tax returns. I thought my friend Lorna has a much better way of living than I do for a yoga retreat in Bali as we go through. But it could break down the barriers from physical documents and those very frustrating spreadsheets that we have to deal with some clients. And all this is very easy for me to say, oh, look, we've got these great tools. But that's why it can't be underestimated, the challenge that you as practitioners have to face. And as we move on to the next slide, we're going to start having to look at how we're going to navigate this change. I said, many of you may already be ready, have your MTD plans in place, and that's fantastic. But again, for those of you who aren't or only part of the way there, this is going to be hard. And I think, as I said earlier, there's a lot of misunderstanding from within sort of those outside the profession who think this is just an easy switch. It is not. And we can't underestimate that challenge. And for lots of people, they don't like change. I myself, I hate change. I know some of my colleagues love to embrace it, but me, I'm a creature of habit. And the same's likely going to be for your clients and also for many of your colleagues. So as we've got on the slide at the moment, we've got some of the reasons for change. It's normally always driven by a few key forces. First is always technology. New developments like AI and cloud tools constantly create new efficiencies and fundamental change for how we work. The second reason, and it's why we're here, well, it's compliance. And it's a change being mandated with MTD and previous iterations of MTD for VAT being that textbook example. Compliance drives us to have to change to meet those regulations. Next, we've got our own business goals. The internal need to increase profitability or improve team capacity forces us to reevaluate and potentially change our processes. And finally, we need to look at competition. And I think competition is really key in this age of AI, because where a lot of people, either in practice or, gosh forbid, our clients who are now using AI and using ChatGPT is going to become the new my mate down the pub said. But with these tools, we're going to see a lot of competition. We're starting to see it from a lot of new starters in the industry who are doing sort of TikTok-only accountancy, Instagram-only accountancy, and they're going to be sort of coming at us from competition. And when other firms raise the bar with new services or a better digital experience, it puts a lot of pressure on sort of some of those who aren't as digitally au fait to adapt to meet new client expectations. And I think the key takeaway when we're looking at our reasons for change is that while MTD is our focus, the most successful practices build a strategy that embraces all of these forces: tech, compliance, business goals, and competition, and not just focusing on one. And then we start looking like we're going through this major shift like MTD. And it isn't just a practical process. It's a deeply human and emotional journey. And the model on the screen, the change curve, helps us to understand that. The most important takeaway here is that it's completely normal for morale and competence to dip before they rise. The path of this change and any change is never going to be a straight line. Initially, a change is introduced, and we often go through denial, frustration, anger. And that leads us down the curve. And the bargaining and self-blame and then the depression element of this curve, I think this is really important to acknowledge, especially if you're a sole practitioner. There is a lot going on. There is so much change in the profession, so many changes. So Sam spoke on AML to start with. We've got MTD, we've got companies house reform, we've got e-invoicing on the horizon. There's so much going on, and it's really, really difficult sometimes to not feel isolated. That's why when I mention this change curve, and if you're feeling sort of overwhelmed by this MTD or these changes or these technological changes, this is why I'm so glad there are representative bodies like the IAB, because you've got an incredible network of both, tax and accounting experts from the IAB team and also other IAB members. So if you are struggling with the pressures of MTD, with all these changes, please reach out to the IAB. They've got resources, they'll be able to help you, and they're going to be hopefully be able to help you navigate some of these changes, as well as things that we present at this coffee morning. So hopefully, sorry, Fleck, if we could jump back to the change curve, sorry. And once we've got through that stage of being overwhelmed and sort of blaming sort of the changes that are coming, this can lead to the lowest point, but then we get to the turning point. And that's where our experimentation begins. We start to test new process. We can try out new things. We can try out new software. And this experimentation hopefully allows us to climb out of the dip, leading to acceptance. Fine, MTD is going to happen. It's coming in April. And we've now accepted that new reality. And finally, we begin to integrate, where the new ways of working become second nature. And crucially, the curve usually ends with morale and competence higher than when they started. And I wanted to show this to normalize the journey. Recognizing where you are on this curve is the first step, and creating the space and environment to keep, and that's key to moving forward. So we need a change plan if we haven't got one. So let's bring all those points together and navigate this change successfully. We're going to need to have a clear process. It starts with agreeing on a vision and communicating it effectively to all of your stakeholders, whether it be your managers, the partners, staff, and clients, to get their buy-in. Next, we're going to build a collaborative plan with the right training and support, but you must be ready to capture feedback, learn, and adapt as you go. And I think that's key, because that's how we really get to address resistance and resistance to change. I think a lot of people always push back on things because it's different. And if we go in all guns blazing saying, well, it's this way, my way or the highway, that's not going to get us the results that we need. So we need to capture that feedback. And if we need to pivot, if we need to change, it's okay to adapt as we go. And we need to measure our results. We want to communicate the wins to our team to build momentum and create advocates internally for new ways of working. I think it's really important to remember this is going to be a continuous journey. It's not going to be an overnight switch. It's a process to move from old to a new way, designed to solve problems and grow your practice. At the top of this list, I have noted identify digital champions. And what I've seen through a number of firms who have started really successfully rolling out their MTD plans is they've identified someone within the practice who's sort of got a bit of an eye for tech, and we want to give them the opportunity to run with this ball. And if we've got people in our firms who can do that, I would strongly encourage you to welcome them into the fold of your MTD transition. If you're a sole practitioner, I congratulate you. You have now been appointed your digital champion for your firm. And again, there are resources and support available. One of the things I would mention as well before we move on to our next slide, if you're a Xero user, you can contact our partner consulting team. So if you are anointed as the digital champion after this session today, you can contact them. They'll help you with a plan. They'll get you ready to go. So we've spoken about our firms. Now we need to look at how we're going to support our clients for this evolution, how we're going to guide our clients from the old world to the new. And this is where our roles in the profession as a trusted advisor become critical. and where we must answer their most unspoken question. And that question is always, what's in it for me? Think of your practice as a filter. On one side, you've got the external world, all the complex HMRC legislation, software updates, and jargon that can overwhelm a small business owner. Then the other side, you've got your clients who are experts at running their business. They may be a fantastic artist, a brilliant baker, and they're not very good at navigating tax law because that's why they didn't get into their business for it. Our jobs in this profession is to absorb all that external complexity and translate it into simple, actionable plan. You're the signal in the noise. You turn complex rules into a clear conversation that says, here's what this means for you, and here's our plan. And when you do this successfully, the result is confident, compliant clients and a much stronger, valuable relationship with them. So on the next slide, we start considering the what's in it for me conversations with our clients. Because obviously, as always, we are going to have to do a lot of the education ourselves of our clients. HMRC will be sending the odd letter here or there, but unfortunately, again, it's going to largely be down to the accounting and bookkeeping community to educate clients. The first thing they might get is a letter on the doormat in February saying, you've got to comply with MTD. And I think what we need to do is we need to frame these conversations with our clients, if we haven't had them already, that this is more, it can't just be about compliance. And I said, we need to answer that what's in it for me question and focus on the tangible benefits to our clients. Obviously, we can talk about how digitization will save them time. Automation drastically cuts down their admin tasks. It's letting them focus more on their core business. If we can solve their paperwork headaches like capture on the go, simply snapping photos of receipts on their phones, eliminating lost documents and stress, it's done. One of the benefits, which we've also seen resonate with small businesses, is it's helping them get paid faster. Features like online invoicing, integrated payment services directly improve their cash flow. And I think perhaps most powerful, we get to offer clarity with real-time business insights. Having up-to-date financial data allows them to make smarter, more informed business decisions. So we're not just talking about tax when we talk to our clients. We're offering them time. We're offering them less stress, faster payments, and the clarity to run a better business. And then I think how we need to look at this, and we need to move on to the next slide for this one, is we need to look at the human side of change. And how we do this successfully, and how we do this final part of the digital journey. It all comes down to embracing the human side of change, both within our practice and with our clients as well. And it's going to start with awareness. We've got to understand the daily challenges and the pain points of our teams and clients. The biggest resistance comes from the fear of the unknown. And we need to make sure that we have empathy and clear communication with all of our stakeholders to make sure we're there. And that helps champion the vision of where we're going. From there, we can build the knowledge. And as advisors, it's our job to champion the vision in a better way of working and confidently sharing the advantages with our clients. And this all leads to success. This is achieved when we collaborate on a plan, we welcome feedback, and we turn compliance mandates into a true partnership. But I think this is the key fact when we're looking at MTD, both internal with our colleagues and external with our clients. For those who aren't using digital tools at this stage, this is an astronomical change. We've said it for a long time, and I think sort of everyone who is an IAB member would have all understood, this is the biggest change in a generation in the tax system. It's going to shake up how we do things. It's going to add complication and confusions into our workflows. Is this client on classic self-assessment, or are they on MTD? Do they have an easement for joint property? And while HMRC have done their best to sort of simplify things with the soft landing, so there are no late filing penalties for the quarterly updates for the 26-27 tax year, which I think is a really welcome addition to the MTD tool belt, because it means if clients are late, we can help get them into the routine. But we really need to be aware of how this could impact our clients, both for the bad, but also the good. So I mentioned earlier, if you need an MTD action plan, if you scan the QR code, which we'll leave up on the screen for a while, so while I ramble on a little bit, you can scan this and you can gain access to an action plan. This is going to give you access to a Making Tax Digital information hub. It's got things for internal use. It's got things for external use on training our clients. It's got things in there on pricing. And one of the last things I want to talk about before we go to the Q&A is that pricing. And I've seen many people say, well, here's how you do pricing. There is no one size fits all. But until you know the services that you want to provide, until you know the services you're going to offer, if you're doing a full end-to-end, if you're going to do it based on what your client wants, are you going to use one software vendor? Are you going to use multiple software vendors? I think it's really tricky to understand how you're going to price things. If you have participants in the current testing phase for the 25-26 tax year, I've spoken to a number of accountants and bookkeepers, and nobody is charging for this first year of service, which I know is met with like a Marmite-like reaction from accountants and bookkeepers. Some say, yep, that makes sense. It gives me time to test my processes. And a number of accountants and bookkeepers say, why am I not charging for a service that I'm providing for my clients? If I'm doing it for free now, they're going to say, well, where's the value when I pay for it in the future? So I would say if you are involved in the beta or want to get involved in the beta testing, and HMRC is still letting people sign up, you can retrospectively file quarters, just consider your pricing model, having those discussions with your clients. And I think the other thing about by having these conversations with clients now, it's going to remove part of the problems we're anticipating. And we know accountants and bookkeepers have said, well, the software just does it all. It doesn't. You know, you can automate as far as you can, but no one's more accountable than an accountant or a bookkeeper to translate that information. And I think that's the real key when we come through MTD. It's going to be about the data. It's going to be about making sure we provide value to our clients. Two final things for the Q&A before we move on to the Q&A. And I said during the Q&A, we'll leave the QR code up on the screen as well. VAT coterminous periods of MTD filing. I have spoken to a number of accountants and bookkeepers who have started switching their clients' VAT quarters to align with the new MTD quarters. They see it as because they're already doing the bookkeeping for the VAT, they might as well tag on the MTD quarters as well. Some people are not a fan of that because obviously it then means you've then got really big bottlenecks throughout the year. So I think we need to consider that again when we start looking at our workflow and our processes. Make sure we've got the staffing, make sure we've got the support in place, make sure we've got any holiday cover, because if we don't want to, what we want MTD to do is to streamline our efficiencies. We want to use our tech to better serve us as practitioners. What we don't want is just to have 4 massive bottlenecks of stress every year as opposed to 1. And the final thing, which I know will make people's eyes roll when I mention these 2 letters, but these 2 words, engagement letters. Please remember, once you know what services you're offering, to update your engagement letters to include your MTD for income tax service lines to make sure you are up to date with all of those. As I said, this is a challenging time for practitioners, and it isn't just a click of the button. But if we get processes in now, we get our clients and our colleagues into good habits with digital admin, we can make MTD a success, and we can even make it a really good opportunity for our profession to learn more about our clients, to have better insights in their real-time data, and future-proof them for future changes. So that's the end of me talking aimlessly at all of you. And again, thank you very much for indulging me as I talk about my favorite topic of MTD. I will pass back to Sam, who can sort of go through some of the questions in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer as many as I can in the time we have left.
Excellent, thank you, Stuart, and thank you for the presentation. I thought it gave a really good broad perspective. I think for members, in contrast to the session with HMRC in the previous coffee morning, where we were looking at examples of where people actually were. If you haven't got a structure in place, I thought that would give a really good perspective of kind of like how to approach it and where to start, really, because like you said, it can be very overwhelming, especially if you're a sole trader. We do have a couple of questions which I'll go into, and do keep them coming, please. Kay has asked, she wants to know if there's a video yet demonstrating how the Xero MTD process works to show clients. I don't know if that's in your resources at all.
Yes, so we've got a demo that shows essentially the quarterly update through to end of year filing. I believe, and if it's not up there, it will be soon. We've just released multi-business in Xero for Making Tax Digital. So if you've got a client who's, let's say, got 3 sole trades or a sole trade and a rental property, they can do it all in one Xero subscription. They don't need to have multiple Xero orgs. They can just do it all from one place. So on the IT MTD for IT hub on Xero, we've got a video of sort of the end-to-end solution, how it looks. Obviously, we haven't been able to sort of live test final declaration yet because we haven't got to our the 5th of April 2026 yet. But in our testing, we've got a good response back. The reason why we've had to sort of be a bit sort of canned with what we can present is using HMRC's live test data. Their test environment sends back the same figure for every response you have. So if we do the end of year submission, it says, thank you, your income is 10, your personal allowance is 10, your deductions are 10. So it doesn't give you a beautiful view. So hopefully the videos we've got on our website of how the product works with some of our own dummy data shows that in a good light, so you can show it to your clients.
Stuart, we can also add that we've got the MTD YouTube series, which is a 7-part video series of short videos, which go through each step of the workflow. And the approach that we've taken is that do it together approach. So sharing the load and how Xero can help you and your clients do that. So what we'll do is we will share that link with Sam, and she can share it with all of you afterwards as well.
Brilliant. Yeah. See, this is why we have you on the call, Flacker, so I don't forget things.
No. There's some people commenting on pricing, basically saying that they fail to see how prices will not increase. And there's obviously comments in terms of the impact of MTD. Angelo has asked whether there's engagement letters template available from the IAB. Yes, there is in the members area. I'll also kind of send out a link to that as well at a later date, but there is a template on the IAB website. Lots of thank you, Stuart. Also, does Xero have the bridging option to upload spreadsheets similar to VAT return bridging software using a spreadsheet?
So we don't have any bridging tools for Making Tax Digital for income tax. I think with the complexity that's coming in with MTD, so to not go overly techie, but once you've created that VAT return, you're pushing 9 boxes of data up to HMRC. That's essentially what you're utilizing that bridging tool for. For MTD, for income tax, you've got to push and both pull data. So your spreadsheets and your bridging tools become quite complex. There's definitely a place in the market for them, but it's not something that Xero think builds in good digital habits for MTD for income tax. And also going forwards, we know that HMRC originally they didn't want spreadsheets to be part of MTD. So I think spreadsheets are going to be here for the short term, but medium to long term, I think we're going to see a shift from HMRC moving away from spreadsheets because it can still be manipulated. It can still be edited. It's not as secure. There's more chances for error. So whilst I know there will be bridging tools available for the transition, I would say by the time we get to the MTD cycle, I would expect there would be some consideration from HMRC about where spreadsheets sit in this MTD future.
Okay. I hope that answered that question. If there's any further clarification, just please do pop a note in the chat. Another one is how to deal with clients like pubs, mechanics, who are very paper-based in some cases. What software can help them, or are people using CSV bank statements?
So it's a bit of a mix at the moment. So obviously we're seeing a lot of CSV imports directly into Xero. So they get the CSVs from the client to the accountant, they're uploading it. What we're seeing more of, though, is a bit more of an outreach from some of our sort of very sort of digital first accountants. They're going out to these businesses, helping set up their bank feeds so they can see it all in real time and actually go and physically do it for them. I think the biggest change I've seen in some of those industries, which is, as you've said, are historically more paper-based, we're seeing snap tools like HubDoc are becoming much, much more popular. And as you mentioned, sort of the concept of the mechanic, my local mechanic, again, is someone who was predominantly paper-based, and he was terrible with his bookkeeping. He is the classic paper, I've lost it, it's in the bottom of the truck. He now snaps everything. And for the first time, he was like, wow, I've got loads of expenses that I've never claimed before. So it's giving them those insights. So everyone's got a phone. And I think the way to best articulate it to those very digital they're very manual businesses is they're using tech on their phone already. The chances are they're using open banking. They're using Spotify for their music. They've got everything in there. One different app of just taking a photograph and it feeds into their accounting software. I think that's a really good, compelling argument and then it's done. Because we see a lot of these businesses or pub partnerships, again, it's always the traditional, right, we sit down, we'll do the books at the end of the week or end of the month, and they sit down sort of with their sort of green visor on as they start tapping away on the adding machine. But if we can start either automating the processes or capturing receipts as we go, it's going to save them a lot of time. And I think that's very much the what's in it for me standpoint from how I see it.
Okay. And I think you may have kind of answered this one, but Jonathan has asked, how can a bookkeeper or accountancy firm service a variety of clients going forward, with some clients using Xero, others QuickBooks, others Sage or something else? Will they need to choose one software solution or focus on serving clients using particular software?
I think that's down from a firm by firm standpoint. Again, we've spoken to firms who are Xero only practices. We've spoken to firms who are using a combination of different bookkeeping softwares and one piece of software for their end of year tax filing. I think it's a case of what works best for you and what works best for your clients. Again, we've seen practices who are fully software agnostic, or we've seen firms who are going, right, I'm just sticking to this one vendor for me, and if my clients don't like it, well, we will just disengage. Which again, even just saying those words when I started it back in 2003, saying I'll disengage a client because I won't use a piece of software is wild to me. But if it impacts our processes, our workflow, are we actually making profit on those clients, or are we just keeping them because they're a legacy client? These are the things I think are important to look at. So from a Xero standpoint, we do the full end-to-end in one system. So you can do books to tax, submission to HMRC, quarterly updates. But if you just use Xero for your bookkeeping and you use something like an IRS, or you use something like a CCH for your tax, you can still use a combination of those as you go through. It's just what best suits your firm and what best suits your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Someone who, I'm sure this is the case, someone has asked whether it's easy to upload a spreadsheet into Xero software.
Yeah, you take it in as a CSV. There's stuff on our help hub so you can import documentation to it. And again, that meets HMRC's requirements of digital links. So again, as long as there's no manual intervention, once the spreadsheet is there, you can get data into Xero. Just look on our help hub for advice on how to do that. But again, it will be more manual than the old bridging solution to get stuff to HMRC. So obviously, you still have to get the data from spreadsheet into Xero, and then Xero will then push that data into HMRC for their quarterly updates.
Yeah. Interesting here. I don't know whether this is just an observation to point out for everyone. I don't know if everyone's following the chat, but Mike talking about a client that used bank software and got themselves into a little bit of a pickle, and then ended up appointing them. But again, I suppose, thinking of communication to your clients, depending on how to phrase it, it's probably worth warning of that potential pitfall. I don't know if you've had any other similar case studies on that, Stuart, that you can share that might be helpful for people to communicate.
Yeah, I think a lot of it again is down to education of what's going to happen and what's going to be there. Because again, I know a lot of firms are just doing the end of year submission, and they're going to leave their clients to do their quarterly updates. But if the data is no good, it's the classic case of rubbish in, rubbish out. And then at the end of the year, as practitioners, we're going to have to, unravel this mess rather than it being done in real time. So again, it's down to how we're going to train our clients and educate our clients. But it also then feeds back into our pricing model. And it's something that I've not actually seen universally successful yet, as in how we're going to bill our clients for this. Because obviously, if we're going to go out and train them, if we're going to go out and teach them how to use HubDoc or scan in invoices or connect bank feeds, that's all time for us as practitioners. Where does it go on the timesheet? Do we sit it on the account and write it off, piece by piece? Do we leave it in work in progress? Do we write it off? Or are we just going to acknowledge that this is the cost of transitioning to digital? And again, when you're looking at your pricing structures, just consider that. When you do client segmentation, especially for these examples where people have made a real mess with banking software, how much time is it going to take for you to rectify that versus you starting again, basically? And I think that's, again, really key as part of your onboarding and your workflow with these clients on who does what and who is accountable for the data.
That's a good response. There's quite a few comments on pricing, and I think anytime we have a session regarding MTD, pricing always comes up. So no, definitely.
Sam, we also have a pricing guide that we will share with everyone post this webinar. So I think that should help answer some of the questions as well.
Yeah, it's good to get a broad perspective, definitely. I'm trying to see if there's anything else going forward now. I think that might be it. I mean, if there's anything else, I will get them to you, Stuart. There will be a follow-up email that goes around after this session, so you can link to some of the resources that Stuart and Flacker mentioned, and another. Obviously, you can access the coffee morning video as well post session. But thank you very much, Stuart. Thank you very much, Flacker, for the presentation. I think it looks from the chat that everyone found it very, very useful. So thank you. And then with a few minutes to go, it just leaves me to say a very Merry Christmas to you all. And I hope that you have a wonderful time over the festive period, despite it being a busy, busy time for you all, I know. Do try and take a break. Thank you for coming together every month on the coffee morning. We've had some great numbers. It's great to get so many IAB members together all in one place on a monthly basis. So I hope that you've found this year's coffee morning content useful. And we look forward to seeing you all again in the new year. Thank you very much.